the wallets and exchange into one place, and basically working on it bookkeeping, accounting point of view. We're well funded. We had a successful token launch back in 2017, and we're not open source. We're a centralized company.
So I'm Zhenya Barkanova. I am the head of marketing with Scale. Scale is the layer 2 Ethereum scalability solution. Allows to run smart contracts and transactions on insane speeds. It's decentralized, just like Ethereum is. It's using really sophisticated math to make sure the consensus works, and the system is very reliable. And we are very developer focused. So Scale is very focused on deploying scalability sidechains. It takes just 45 seconds to deploy a sidechain, and it takes 2 lines of code to deploy Ethereum smart contract onto our sidechain. So it's very developer focused. It's very similar to how Twilio and how Stripe did their launch and did their growth in developer community. So that's Scale and how we are thinking about our go-to-market and working with developers. We are a Series A startup, really well funded, multi-coin led, our Series A. And we are looking to do more fundraising this year.
All right. I am Rodrigo with The Graph. I'm the community lead. I've been there about a year. I was first hire from inception when they started last year, March. What The Graph is a query protocol. So we are indexing data off of Ethereum and IPFS and eventually other blockchains, and then making that data available to front-end dApps. So we're kind of a layer that sits between the underlying blockchain data, and then we make it available so developers can have fast and responsive queries to their web and mobile apps that they're building. We are also well-funded. We're privately funded. We've done a seed round so far, and we're in the process of another fundraise. We are entirely open source. We open sourced our code last summer, and it's been available for developers to play with. And then we recently launched a hosted service. So we have this centralized service that is a stopgap measure while we build out our fully decentralized network. So the idea is that we wanted to, rather than say, we're going to spend 2 years developing this decentralized network, we thought our strategic approach was to open source our code first, to get it in the hands of developers to play with, get immediate feedback on what was working and what wasn't. And then we wanted to get something usable in the hands of developers, so we launched this centralized service that is on infrastructure that we maintain and operate for free. We hope to keep it free for as long as we can, so that developers could start to build applications on top of our platform and to start aggregating and indexing as much data onto the graph as possible, because our end game is that we want all the data on the graph. So any data that's stored in Ethereum, and then in the future other blockchains, would all be indexed on the graph. And then that's the way, if you're building a dApp on the front end, that's how you would access that data. And so the long-term vision is to build out a fully decentralized network, which we're in the process of building in parallel while we operate and maintain this centralized service. So that's that.
Cool, awesome. Can everyone hear okay? Just doing a sanity check. You're good in the back there? Great. So I know we all come from tech background, like many of us in San Francisco. So maybe if you could take us a step back and tell us how you kind of found yourself in this crazy world of blockchain, and some experiences along the way that kind of defined you moving into this space, and maybe what you've learned in your time in the space so far.
Yeah, I've been in a mobile marketing agency, helping big brands, big startups to promote their apps. 8 months ago, I decided that it's time to move on. Decided to think about the future. Really like drones, really like cryptocurrencies and autonomous cars, but crypto eventually won. It was right in the time that everything surged out and went all the way to the top. and I found it very, very interesting, and that's how I'm here today.
So I've been in marketing for over 15 years. And I'm from Russia. Back in Moscow, I've been in a number of industries, including pharma, movie theaters, building shopping malls, and I've been doing advertising, shopper experience, brand for on various sides of the markets that are today being transformed by blockchain. And it's fascinating to see how big industries are shifting into the new paradigms. And I discovered blockchain in the spring of 2017. And the first reaction as for many people was like, what? Crypto tokens? And then something, I started meeting people. And the smartest people I was meeting were very interested in the space. And that helped me realize that probably it's not the crypto tokens are weird, but it's that I am not seeing something. I started researching, and the more I was researching, the less I wanted to stay in traditional tech. And I was working for Adobe, was doing user retention strategy for over 5 million, responsible for huge volume of dollars for 5 million paid accounts, was running a data team, doing marketing, doing all kinds of behavioral stuff. And once I discovered blockchain, the blockchain was becoming increasingly more interesting because there's so many things overlap here. It's economics, it's marketing, it's technology, which is completely groundbreaking, it's mathematics. It's sociology, psychology, just everything. And so, yeah, I started doing more and more and more things in blockchain, going to meetups, and at some point just ported completely onto the decentralized world. No.
So I've been a serial entrepreneur since the mid-90s. I've started, was CEO of 3 startups prior to this, and this is actually my first employed role, believe it or not, in my entire career. So that's a nice experience to not have all the decisions and pressure be on my shoulders for once. But how that happened was I had been an investor, and I remember back in 2010 whenever the pizza purchase with Bitcoin happened, and I remember reading about it and just kind of being interested in it, and then setting up a Coinbase account in 2012. I'm like, what's this? And then fortunately having forgotten about it and then realizing I had had it years later. But my last startup was in encrypted communication, so I was already had a deep dive in cryptography and was interested in all of that and the mathematics behind it. And was exiting my last startup and was looking for kind of what was next. And this was in 2017, and I had a serious interest in moving into the blockchain space. And it was actually fortuitous that I was working at a co-working space just like this, not crypto specific, but at Galvanize here in San Francisco. And Yaniv, who's the project lead, one of the founders of the Graph, this was around December of 2017, at the height, and he had this Ethereum ugly Christmas sweater on, and I noticed it, and struck up a conversation about it, and that began a friendship, and the timing worked out that I was exiting my last startup, and so it was actually just sort of fortuitous that the meeting happened and I moved into the space and haven't looked back since.
Awesome, great tale. So let's take a look back. So Raz, I know you did an ICO with Blocks.io, kind of went through that journey. So why don't you tell us a little bit about, taking us from that ICO through to now, and some of the techniques you've been using to really, grow. I know you said you transitioned from, B2C to more of a B2B approach. Maybe just tell us some specific anecdotes along those tales we can learn from.
Yeah, definitely. So we started as a B2C solution, portfolio management. You're probably familiar with solutions like Delta, Blockfolio. This was kind of a block solution. And when crypto winter started, we were starting to focus on more reasonable ways to monetize and start making money. And we discovered that there's a big pain for a company like ourselves, ICO companies or token launch companies, to actually handle all of these crypto. I meet day-to-day companies who's got hundreds of millions of dollars, where their finance team looks like a hot dog stand in the middle of the Fifth Avenue. It's kind of funny, but a lot of entrepreneurs received a large amount of monies or cryptocurrencies, and it's kind of hard to manage it. So I guess that at the moment our biggest competitor is the Excel sheet, because most of the companies are actually managing it on Excel sheets. That's kind of funny from my point of view, and we're trying to bring the right solution to actually solve it. So moving from a B2C solution to a B2B solution, where the big players in the market like Facebook, Google, Twitter are banning all your ads on a regular basis. It's something that it's not easy to do, but working out and keep on growing as we go.
And Jenny or Rodrigo, I know you're mostly focused on getting open source developers, so let's maybe shift the focus to that. And Jenny, you're launching a mainnet soon, or?
Yeah, that's correct. This year we just launched our DevNet, which happened literally like 2 weeks ago at Denver, which went super successfully. We had a lot of people building on scale, deploying their hacks on scale, and having their smart contracts run on Web3 on Web 2 speeds. So there was no delay in smart contract execution, which is unthought of. And in the summer, we are launching our mainnet. A lot of work will go into that, and there will be product work, engineering work, and a lot of marketing work and community building. And in marketing, we will be focused at acquiring developers, having people actually build and deploy on scale, and also we will be building our validator community and node operators, as scale is a decentralized layer 2 solution. Yeah, that's it.
Great. And Rodrigo, I know we were just talking about your graph day, where you and Jenny actually met, and that's, I think that's a really interesting technique. I'm seeing a little bit more of it among my clients as well, where they're just trying to focus, get all the people in one room and really just kick off from there and try and get, Jenny, I mentioned before that marketing is a lot about, creating advocacy as opposed to marketing. So maybe you just tell us a little bit about your experience and sure that's something we can all learn from.
Yeah, so for those of you that aren't familiar, we hosted what we hope to be an annual event called Graph Day. And it was where we had a day-long event. We rented a theater here in the Mission District. It's an old historic kind of movie theater, which was well suited for a day of talks and mingling. And so the event was an opportunity for us to sort of talk about what we're doing. We had a keynote address that sort of gave like the whole kind of view, the vision. Our project lead gave the vision of like where we've come from, why this evolved, why we have this problem, the graph. And then we announced our hosted service. So it was sort of like an Apple event in a way, but it wasn't just focused on us. We had other relevant topics to people that were in the community. So we had talks that were talking about sharding. We had talks about different protocols. We had talks from investors. So there were like 20-minute talks interspersed throughout the day. We had lunch and breaks and opportunities for networking. So it ended up being a really positive experience. And the way we handled the event was, it was actually, this was sort of not necessarily planned, but the space was set up in such a way that they do a lot of like digital media kind of art. And so we have a great in-house design team, and we created these sort of projected like graphics, and the space felt very much more like an art space. And like the comment that people had was, it was like, wow, this wasn't like a tech. It felt more like this artistic kind of environment. And but another thing is like getting people to care and like getting people to come. And so a lot of it has to do with like personal relationships, a lot of outreach on Twitter. We went through prior hackathons, so we kind of culled through kind of all the lists and connections we had to get people to come and care, because you know it was done on a Friday, so it was a work day, so to get people to like take off work was a challenge, and it was all sort of planned in a short amount of time, which I wouldn't recommend. I'd give yourself some lead time. Yeah, we pulled it together, so the ideas came about sort of, this was heading into the holidays, so it was like around December, kind of mid, like Thanksgiving, early December. It was like, let's do Graph Day, and it was like, Rodrigo, figure it out. And I was like, okay. And then it was like heading into Christmas, and like everybody goes away for 2 weeks, so we really couldn't get, and it was like the date was set, it was like end of January we're doing it, and I was like, guys, we only have like, I don't know if you're aware, but we have a few weeks. So it was really pulled together in, you know, all of January, from like the 1st or the 2nd after New Year's Day to the 25th. So that was a Herculean effort to pull it together, and I do not recommend that if you plan to sleep or have you know, stress-free existence. But we did. I would give yourself, you know, lots of time. Some key takeaways that I think we would have done better is to have a content strategy. Like because it was such short notice, I think having like blog posts, if you're doing Medium or anything like that, having those written in advance and saying, and then have a schedule, so that's all like timed out of when you're going to tweet, when you're going to have this blog post, like what to expect at Graph Day, or Graph Day is coming, like have that all figured out. And then also the content afterwards, kind of, it can take time to write really good pieces on Medium. That's another thing we found. So making sure you dedicate time and energy to that. But yeah, I think those are the key kind of points to take away.
So I was in a Graph Day, and that's a fantastic way of promoting your project, and the quality of the event was just incredible. Because in the usual Bitcoin and the usual crypto conference, you go in the event and there is the VIP space, and there is the space for everyone else. So in the Graph Day, it was all VIP space. You were hanging out with speakers, you were hanging out with lead investors, and you were hanging out with the leaders of fascinating projects. So you were talking to people who do DAI, you were talking to people who are doing compound capital, and you were just like the things that you were doing on crypto networks yesterday, like porting your DAI on compound and blending it out, so you could see founders of all those projects, and you could have really in-depth conversations about those technologies. Totally fascinating. And I think that a level of respect that the Graph built for themselves in the event is uncomparable with any other marketing investment. And the amount of goodwill that was created on the like most elite levels of community was like uncomparable to anything again. So yeah, I developed like a huge level of respect for you guys.
I think we more relate when you get thrown a task and it's like, figure it out, Rodrigo. So marketers memos, and my client just proposed a similar day to Graph Day, which I found out today, so it sounds daunting. So I hope they put enough time to it, like you recommend. Sticking on open source before we move out of that, I'll leave this as an open question. So what are the best examples of, open source marketing done well? I know we talked to one just there with Graph Day, but, referring to your own experience or other experiences you've seen in the market, what are some good examples you can share with us we can all learn from?
I've actually got blown away with what Handshake does. Is everyone familiar with what Handshake is? Right, so just if people are not familiar, this is a DNS on blockchain. So that's a solution that allows you to do domain names in a decentralized way. And traditional domain names services, they will all be overloaded once the real activity on blockchain starts. So Handshake is a very important technology of the world of the future, where everything is multi-sided markets, where everything is tokenized, and where really a lot of stuff is happening on blockchain. So Handshake is a project that's community-owned. It's open source from the very beginning, and there is a core team. But the whole ethos of Handshake is they have a beautiful way of incorporating a little bit of like anarchy in their core brand. And you can feel how well they are managed and how good they are at at doing open source, at being clear to community, and to actually, I think that the most difficult thing in crypto marketing and in community management is not running Telegram groups, but it's actually having your community build together with you, or do testing together with you, or run your nodes. And so like when you have your community be a part of your product, and so Handshake does it amazingly well. I remember myself being blown away when I was just like looking at their website, went to their GitHub. It's done in such an intelligent, forward-looking way. Handshake?
Yeah, so how much face time do you guys actually get with your developers in particular? You know, is it mostly done online or?
Oh, yeah, so we've de-emphasized Telegram and focus all of our resources on Discord. So we will have internal engineering discussions on Discord because we want them to be public so that people can like share and see what our team is talking about and the issues they're working on. And it's also like our support channel. And so kind of everyone on our team, or most engineers, will answer a question on Discord at any time, at any hour, and fortunately we have coverage through most time zones, so people get answers quickly, and that's really important to us to make sure that we take care of the developers that are working with us. And then we've emphasized also hackathons, so it's kind of a dual strategy there where we're putting our dollars into like sponsoring hackathons. And so the idea being that, you know, there's incentives there, there's a prize essentially you can win to build, you know, on our platform. So what better incentive than money, right? To get people to take an interest who may not, you know, they may be working on other projects and then they've carved out a weekend to like dig into your documentation and like learn it. And there's money at stake, right? So it's like game theory here, like incentives. And so that's been fantastic for us because we develop, you know, face-to-face rapport. And I'm sure Jenny can speak to this too. We were just at ETH Denver, and yeah, you're up till like 4 in the morning, you know, working with people. And that, I mean, it's camaraderie there because we're all in it together and we're helping them like get to the finish line. And so so hackathons have been a really important strategy for us. So that's kind of where we get our face time, and then online through Discord.
Great. And do you have anything to add?
So yeah, we are pretty similar.
We're actually a bit different.
Yeah.
So first of all, ETH Denver, I must say, I was also there. It was a great event. I think that things have been done really, really good there in relation to hackathons. Our main audience are not developers, are actually CFOs and finance teams. That it's kind of a very different challenge. I don't know if you know, but probably most of the CFOs in your companies and finance people are considered, and I just say consider as kind of a gray field where you don't really, you know, crunching numbers and trying to be and save a few dollars in every option. And we're kind of our challenge is to take blocks and to take those CFOs and make them the heroes, or make them I don't know, again, I'm coming from the marketing and mobile marketing a field where CMOs working in conventions, they are the heroes, right? Everybody's chasing them, everybody's trying to get them. So our goal in 2019 is to get the CFOs, take the financial controllers, and make them the heroes of the world.
Great. Just touching on conferences, I know we kind of moved from hackathons to conferences, but I know, Raz, you've did a lot of conferences 2018, more planned 2019. One of the first things a client comes to me, especially when they're getting started, is kind of, you know, there's so many conferences, what are we going to, what's worth a while, what's the ROI, you know, how do I spend my money? Any advice for those type of questions?
Yeah, definitely. So I've been walking around a lot of conferences during 2018 where we got around, I think September, October, I asked everybody to just stop. It was just too many conferences. It wasn't ROI positive. It wasn't efficient. It was just walking around to another event and another event, another event. Everything was super expensive because everybody had a lot of money. So the conferences actually try to take advantage of that. Where in 2019, all of a sudden, there's no conferences. Everything is much cheaper. You can actually choose the right convention and go kind of all in. And make sure that everybody are aware of your being in that convention. So the strategy that we choose, different than 2018, where we try to be in as many conventions as possible, is in this year, take just a handful of conventions, but everybody who will be in that convention will remember that Blocks was part of that convention. So that's, from our point of view, the strategy. Some Consensus in New York, both Consensus in May and both Consensus in Invest. I think those are by far the most efficient and most worthy conventions. There's another real convention, good convention that we're heading in April, CIS in LA. That is also, I've been there last year, and I think that they're doing a really good job, both on marketing, on the different social channels, and actually at the event itself. That's the ones that pop into my mind. So we're, again, focusing mainly on meetups like these that are you're getting the right audience in the right place. And also kind of a shout out for Starfish. This is a great place to be. We're both me and Will are just sitting here, and you know, there's thousands of people going through this working space. So every sign is already a small effort in marketing that more and more people get to know us.
Good branding points there. Well done.
So we don't do much conferences this year. We are focused on hackathons. And because we are going after developers, we also are looking at events that are outside of crypto. For example, big gaming conferences. As we want people who, we want people to build on our platform, and we're interested not only in core crypto and core Ethereum developers.
Yeah, we're also one of the sponsors for a Rust conference, which is the programming language that we are using. And so that is more of a means of awareness and also a means to recruit, because finding Rust developers can be a bit of a challenge because it's a pretty small community of people.
But Rust is growing, actually.
Yeah, it's growing very much. Yeah.
So looking forward a little bit now, we're in 2019, but what are, we talked about conferences, we talked about, getting open source developers. What kind of KPIs are you getting from, the hires up at your company? And, what kind of techniques, it'd be good to dig into specific kind of techniques you guys are using to meet those goals, which we can all learn from.
So we're tracking, our number one thing we're tracking is how many subgraphs are being, deployed on our hosted service. So, and so everything that we're doing, all of our efforts for this year is essentially, again, going back to the idea that we want to get as much data as we can on the graph, and that directly ties to subgraphs being deployed. And so we're putting all of our efforts towards support on Discord, again, sponsoring the hackathons just to get as many people indexing their smart contracts and starting to ingest that data into the graph.
Can you talk a little bit about subgraphs and what are they?
Yeah, so a subgraph is essentially application-specific data that is for your usage. So let's say you've written a smart contract that performs a specific function. What the graph node does is it typically your data is stored in state variables, and so the graph tracks events being fired off, and it records and indexes those state variables as the events are being fired off, stores it into a Postgres database. When you set up your subgraph, you create a schema, so it's just sort of like a data model for how those the data from your contracts will be mapped into this database format. and then it goes through and indexes from the beginning of time, so essentially the Genesis block, runs through and catches up to the current state, and then going forward it monitors any, in new blocks, any transactions that might happen on your contract, and then keeps it up to date on an ongoing basis. So a subgraph is essentially like your kind of little microcosm of data in that whole Ethereum blockchain that you care about.
Yeah, so with the scale, and it's just very relevant, the KPIs for today, I think for all of us, will be very relevant to the businesses of the future that we are building in like 5 years from now, in the tomorrow, and also the like how we view the market that we will be serving. And so the way scale sees the world is the multi-sided markets, and it's a lot of business activity being powered by smart contracts. We literally see that in the future there will be like millions and millions of smart contracts will be running simultaneously on blockchains. We want to be able to power that future. So to get there today, and we want to be decentralized. We don't want any of that to be dependent on a centralized authority. So the way we are thinking about this, we are building a very large and powerful community of validators and node operators, one KPI, and our developers, people who are deploying sidechains and are running their smart contracts and their applications on our sidechains. So these are two super important communities that we are building and the most important KPIs.
Right. Yeah, so our platform is live and working. So the main KPI is bringing clients on board. There's about 300, 400 real post-ICO companies that are actually working and building products. Besides that, there's hundreds of other service providers in the blockchain field. And 2019 basically for us is building a brand that's B, getting to as many finance people out there, and basically building the fact that if you're currently using Excel sheet or any other solution out there, you better start using blocks. And again, for future references, it's like it's very obvious when you're starting a company and you want to use, and you're using fiat, you're going to QuickBooks. That's what we're exactly trying to build. Getting the first time that somebody's getting into crypto, and hopefully in the next few years we're going to see more and more, and getting eventually to the mass adoption where every convenience store will actually accept crypto, and will need to use a solution like blocks. So yeah.
Great. So we have about 7 minutes here, and we'll open up plenty of time for questions. We touched a little bit on, community, but I'm always finding it interesting these kind of stories of, the constant communication with, 24/7 of crypto and decentralized teams. Especially, we all know the stories of like ICOs and people just posting like one moon in their Telegraph and whatnot. So how does that kind of change today? I know, you have different perspectives on that front, but, how is communications? Are you keeping it, more controlled, or is it still pretty, 24/7?
So we actually thought about it a lot. We have 4 offices around the world. This is one of them. We have one in China, in Shanghai. Our headquarters are back in Israel. And we have another office in Gibraltar. Each and every one of these offices has a community manager, basically somebody who's managing the community. So we're 24/7, as you mentioned, around the world, in the native language in most cases, trying to, again, fulfill the token launch that we launched back in 2017, and keep on the communication with the teams and the different stakeholders. So Telegram is the main area. Yeah, I think the Telegram is the main, but obviously working with all channels, LinkedIn, Facebook.
How many native languages do you support?
In the platform, at the moment we only support English.
Okay. And in your special?
Sorry?
Community management?
So again, from I think 7 or 8, if I need to count them. In Europe, mainly China and Chinese, yeah, 7 or 8 altogether.
I should follow you guys. So just aside from community management, so actually Ares made me think about a really good anecdote, not from crypto, but like from the normal world. So at some point I was at a fascinating talk of one of the Visa executives. And that's business school, everyone is like honest business suit, everyone is so fancy. And in the very end, he is looking into the audience and he asks a question and he's like, and he's a Visa executive. And he is, okay guys, do you know who is our main competitor? And the audience looks at him, it's like so obvious, it's a MasterCard is your main competitor. And he says, no, like MasterCard, Visa, American Express, we all compete against cash. To your point on spreadsheets. Yeah, and it's just a very interesting way of looking at everything, where like there is a new technology, there is old technology, and how you all together unite to grow your market. Okay, aside from that, yes?
Yeah, in regards to that, sorry to jump in, but basically, a lot of people ask us, how come Microsoft or Intuit or all those huge companies aren't competing with us? And we're saying they are competing with us, but just not the way that you think. Excel is where we're trying to move basically finance people into our platform. So just that.
Yeah, brilliant. So yeah, and the way we do our community management, we're absolutely 24/7. We have a lot of people doing support on our Telegram channel and on our Discord channel. And those are people with very strong engineering background. They are able to answer super deep technical questions. And we are very fast at taking questions, talking to community. That's very important for us.
Yeah, I don't think I have anything to add.
Cool.
Yeah.
Spoke a lot about community management in your tales. Okay, we'll wrap it up shortly, but any closing remarks? I'd be interested to kind of think, if you're here a year from now and looking forward, looking back, how do you think things are going to change? The last 12 months have been pretty wild. Where do you think we'll be in maybe 12 months from now? You can take that from the marketing, or you can take that from marketing, or you can take that from a blockchain. It's an open question.
I think the question of the hour that we're all asking is like, how early are we, right? Like, is it 2 years? Is it 5 years? Is it 10, right? We all are aware that we're, at the forefront of this major revolution, but then the question is like, well, where are the users? Where's the use cases? Is it too early? How early are we? So I think in the next year, it'll be interesting to see if we get like a killer kind of dApp, right? Like the one dApp that tips the scale and like it gets mass adoption. So that'll be interesting. If that happens, I think that could kick off like the next kind of big wave. But I mean, this is normal in market cycles to go through this. Like even, the internet went through this, and every technological cycle goes through this. So those are kind of the questions that I hear like, bantering about. The interest is there. People are really, heads down and focused on really building this sort of foundational technology that's going to power this. It's just a question of like, how quickly is it going to come? So it'd be interesting to see if that gets answered in the next 12 months.
So so recently I read a very interesting book on big history. And big history as it's a super wide angle way of looking at everything that has happened since the Big Bang. And so the book ends in like whatever chapter, like it's a super long book. And in the very end, the guy says, okay, so now we have one more chapter, and that's a chapter about the future. And in this chapter about the future, I will give you several scales of outlook. And there will be short-term outlook for like about 100 years. And there will be a longer-term outlook for like probably about 1,000 years. And there will be like a super long-term outlook. And he says it's very interesting that for the very short-term outlook, it's very difficult to make predictions. But for the longer is the term for the outlook, the longer are the, and more fundamental are the trends that we are working with. And the more reliable predictions we can make. So I do not know what will happen in 12 months. But I do believe that in 5 years, we will be dealing with really high transaction throughput. We will be dealing with super interesting tokenized markets. We will be just like we are sending crypto to each other today, we will be sending Apple stock and Google stock between exchanges and between wallets. We will be like exploring really interesting multi-sided markets, and we'll be trying to figure out true decentralized economies powered purely by math and smart contracts. And so that is prediction I can make with a certain level of confidence. No idea what will happen in 12 months.
So yeah, just talking about books, I also reading a book on a small company named Salesforce. You probably heard about them. Yeah, and fascinating. I recommend you all to read it. But one part that I remember from there is that a lot of advisors came to the founders of Salesforce and told them, drop the .com from your name, because .com is correlated to scams, to, you know, we all know what happened with the .com bubble, and they insist to leave the .com, and obviously today they have the tallest building in the city. So I'm, you know, as Rodrigo mentioned, everybody's our heads down, working. I'm seeing all these companies building crazy stuff. I see great people from all the industry, companies like Google, Facebook, Apple, leaving their job to open new crypto companies. So I think the future is bright. I don't know if it's, again, 12 months or maybe 24 months, but we'll get there.
Great. Well, thanks so much for your time, and we'll open it up. Do we have any questions? I can give you the mic, or if you just want to stand up, whichever works for you.
So you would get sponsors to sort of, you know, be part of it, and then the sponsors post bounties, and bounties are essentially just prizes, and there can be, you know, rules and specifications. You might check out. I can send you some links to examples of what these other hackathons have used, and it's basically kind of a format you can follow. And then typically the payments are, these bounties are posted in something like Gitcoin, and Gitcoin is a means that shows to the hackers that the money is there. You know, it's sort of like an escrow, but it's in crypto, and that once the bounty is fulfilled, or the winner is chosen, that Gitcoin handles the payment to the wallet of the winner. So that just ensures that there's honesty and integrity. There are rules of hackathons of just like, you can't have worked on this project before. It has to be like a new idea. But if you look at kind of other hackathons, they have, you can see the formats they've followed. Kauri.io is one site that was used. I think ETH Denver posted their bounties there. It's Kauri.io. And then there was another one that ETH San Francisco used that I can look up.
Yes, I second to that.
Yeah.
Hi. Wait, sorry, did I interrupt you? Nope. Okay, that's good. Thank you guys for the conversation today. Very interesting. I had a quick question. So, all of you are coming into blockchain from pretty diverse backgrounds and being brand pioneers and marketers of more traditional industries. And I was wondering, what are your main takeaways from switching into marketing blockchain for people who are interested in blockchain from something that is kind of more traditional and less niche?
Yeah, I can take that. Oh, yeah, do you want to?
Go ahead.
Okay. So you just, there is so much comes together in crypto. And you do all sorts of traditional marketing. You do for, like I was at Adobe before, so all traditional tech, like brand marketing, communications, like everything. Yeah, you do all kinds of, like, you think through your funnels, you do A/B testing, and that's, all of a sudden, you have your audience that you, in, like, traditional brick and mortar industries, you like sell on to your customer. In it's software as a service, you want to sell to your customer and you want them to be really engaged and keep using. And so you get all that retention piece and you start building retention strategies. You actually start like really caring. It's not any longer just about like running marketing campaigns around selling. You want to build a long-term relationship. And in crypto, your audience becomes your product. And in crypto, you're open source. So your code becomes a commodity. And your community is what is of true infinite value. And how strong is your community? How people are building with you, how people are running your nodes if you are decentralized. So that is what really matters. And it was just fascinating to see that it's not just, it's very non-transactional. That relationship that you are building is real. The people are, like, if you treat people as people, there is a lot of free, like, goodwill. There is a lot of things that people give back to you, and the community and the power of this decentralized thing becomes very real. So I was fascinated to understand it, and I am amazed to see that it works this way and develops this way.
Yeah, so coming from the mobile marketing world, it was pretty straightforward. You build an app, you find the channel. Again, going back to what I started with Facebook, Google, LinkedIn, Twitter, etc. And you find the cheapest CPI, and you make this whole lifetime value work, and that's the way you wanna roll. But here in the blockchain world, it's kind of different. When all the big players are kind of shutting you down and don't let you advertise, so you can't even bring traffic to do A/B testing. So the challenges are big and real. The way that we see it is think outside of the blocks, and try to get some creative ideas of how to do it when you can spend dollars on Facebook or Google. Yeah, I think that's the biggest challenge in the blockchain world.
Yeah, there was a great saying I heard, and I can't remember who said it, but it was basically to kind of bounce off of what Jenny has said, is that you can, because we're dealing with open source code, that it's very easy to fork your code and basically like copy your code and run off. And so the saying is like, you can fork code, but you can't fork community. And so what keeps people stuck to using your software and using your code is like the camaraderie, the sort of value that you bring to them. You know, there's stories where and maybe one of you know that there was a privacy coin that was released, and basically it had a pretty high founder's reward in it. I think it was like 20% of the coin, and then someone just forked that code and basically took out the founder's reward. And so what that means is like the community will abandon you when you act not in goodwill. And so when you're acting in the best interest of the whole, and this is why I think that it's so interesting and that we deal with like socioeconomics and cryptoeconomics, is that bad actors can get rooted out. That when you're acting in the way in good faith, that you get rewarded for that many times. And so there's sort of a sense as we go to like these events and we meet with the community that people are good in their core, and there's a sense of like cooperation and working together that I didn't get, from the traditional world, where it was very much like, cutthroat and, us and them, and this is more of like, we're all in this together, we're all sort of like building this new foundation. So I feel very much like a camaraderie in the community that I haven't experienced in other places.
I have a question. What role do memes play in marketing?
Can you do that? Huh?
I mean, Dogecoin, just, I don't think there's much needed to say. I was showing a friend the other day what is Dogecoin, and you know, if you read the white paper, I think it's all about the memes. But yeah, that's what I have to say.
Huh?
Yeah. We haven't used memes to our advantage yet, but there is this sort of like reverence in the community. It does skew sort of younger and like sort of like quirky. And so, you know, like when you go to Ethereum conferences and like there's like the unicorn shirts that are worn. So there's very much like a sense of humor that's pervasive. And I do think the sharing of memes is beneficial in the market. We haven't used it personally, but I do think it does create sort of a connection with your audience, you know, because those are the people that are in the space.
So we're building the infrastructure at the moment, and you know, the people or the kids who are actually going to use blockchain, again, as I see it, are the ones who, you know, are 5 or 6 years old at the moment. So I think that, you know, getting all these unicorns, all this biddle, all this, you know, the community, you know, slang, I think that it's super important, especially for the audience that will come in the future into the blockchain scene. That makes sense.
Who else has a question? Or would you like to respond?
Oh, I want more questions.
Yeah. Can you please give 3 top use cases in area of marketing technology that are using blockchain?
Can you kind of expand the question?
The marketing technology use cases which are using blockchain, which are coming up.
So you mean like running it with like ad agents on blockchain or something like that?
Anything related to marketing.
Okay, so
using
some kind of,
blockchain.
okay, so I can see, okay?
There's a project named BitBounce that basically what they do is they market emails. So they're an email solution where you can subscribe and get emails as advertising and getting rewarded for that. That's one form, and from the other side, obviously, marketeers can market on that platform. That's one project that I know that is going really, really well.
Blockchain technology is going to work great with anything related with reward programs. So pure marketing, like you are a customer and I want your fidelity. So by using blockchain is the perfect tool to use to have a token that will be unique to you, and eventually, so a lot of companies are studying and working on reward program on blockchain technology, which is.
And I think a bunch of people know about Brave, which you may have heard of. So they basically the way they look at marketing or advertising, I guess, more in the advertising space, they created a browser, and they have a token called BAT. And they broke it down into the importance of attention as opposed to clicks or views, which is all just bots and can be spam. The whole digital advertising has been broken, so they're trying to break it down into block all ads, and if you want their attention, they have to you can earn tokens and it creates a community. But if you're really interested in that facet, they're probably the leading space in it, and their coin's doing pretty well, and they've had some good partnerships. I think Fortune and Forbes are already starting to use them, and yeah, that whole area, because attention as opposed to clicks and just bots destroying digital media, I think that's the way forward. So it's a really interesting use case.
Yeah, and to add to that, Coinbase acquired earn.com, where it's a fully incentivized website for exploring new solutions. So I would definitely check that as well.
Now that we are warming up, right now in this room we have the CEO of Particle, Particle is basically like Instagram, or I don't know, maybe he will kick my ass, but like the way I see it is basically like Instagram on the Steemit platform. So Instagram to me is like the perfect tool to advertise any product, right? Anyone else?
Yeah, we'll get two more questions, and then we'll just have some drinks and network a bit more.
Hi. So, we've seen this huge shift of marketing, traditional marketing, from sales to building community, genuine community, and, you've outlined that very well as well. So my question is that, what role do you think that the user interface plays in marketing? Because one of that, I'll spin that a little bit, because one of the conversations we usually have is that for scale and for retention of community, maybe the user interface plays a larger role than we see today with DApps. So if you could just kind of elaborate a bit on that.
Oh yeah, everybody, it's such an important topic for this year. Like user interface and user experience is the topic of 2018 and 2019, as everything in blockchain is really slow. And a user experience is horrible, because to do anything on blockchain, you have to go through many steps and interact with interfaces which are not quite built for mass adoption yet. And so yeah, that's very important. And there is a lot of super interesting work that's being done in interfaces and experiences for blockchain and innovative projects overall by IDEO Ventures. So you can just Google them. Fascinating work, incredible talks, really high quality thought on how we should shift from some really overloaded concepts we're using in blockchain and crypto into something that's more perceivable by mass audience. So yeah, IDEO Ventures, fantastic work on that. And there is another really interesting, the main sponsor for Denver Hackathon? Fortmatic. Yeah, they do exactly that. They do user onboarding through very elegant key management. When you don't have to onboard into a crypto project, you normally have to go through on the painful experience of like download your wallet, buy a little bit of Ethereum, like figure out where to store your keys. None of that happens in case crypto projects are using Fortmatic for onboarding. So yeah, those two things I would check out. And that's very important, you're totally right.
Yeah, so 2018 was the year that we built stuff. 2019 is definitely the year of UX UI, getting the blockchain products into 2019 and not I don't know 2000, because at the moment a lot of the projects, a lot of the software out there looks really bad. And again, if we want to get to mass adoption, we want to get there fast. We need to make sure that it aligns with all the different apps that are out there, all the different websites that are out there, in order to make it actually work.
Cool.
Just real quick, for us specifically, even though we're like entirely developer focused, our second hire was a designer before we hired engineering, and we've put a lot of thought and energy into like great looking design, because that also, like to your point, it is marketing. And as I mentioned earlier, some of the key takeaways from Graph Day was not necessarily like the technical talks, but the experience of like the design that was happening around them. Like, even though you may not be able to articulate, oh, that's great design, there's an emotional kind of connection and response to it. And that subconscious connection, and that is just as important as just like shoving a tagline down someone's throat, right? Like, it's more subtle, and we're very much focused on that. Yeah.
Great. I think it's important when you're not using the blockchain, that you're using it in the back end. I think that's the nirvana we're all trying to get to. So get rid of all those friction points and just start doing our thing. I think there's one more question over here.
So how early in the blockchain project was involved, and what are some pitfalls in hiring behind this? I feel like it's such a reach for most mainstream people, outside technology people. Like, how do you market it? I feel like most people in traditional marketing don't really understand we should be doing this blockchain, or the challenges that come with building a blockchain business?
Yeah. So in our case, it just so happened that I was the first person on, and I was a community person. Well, there were 3 founders that were all technical, and they were already kind of building product. And community was like next in line in importance, and then design, and then building an engineering team from that. So, you know, I think first you have to have a product to sell and to show, obviously. But I don't think it's ever too early to start building rapport and community and start talking to people. Finding a marketing person is also a unique challenge, because in our case, it had to be someone who was like technically adept, who could like talk the talk and be able to, you know, go across the line and talk to developers, but also talk to lay people and like explain it. So, so that can be a challenge as well in having like this sort of technical chops. But, you know, yeah, I can't say that it's easy, but amongst the community of people, again, there's very much like a collaborative environment. And so, for example, you know, we met at Graph Day, and then actually she met Scale, the CEO of Scale, at Graph Day, and then like that was end of January, and then she was hired shortly thereafter. So, you know, they had been looking for months, and it was just, you know, sort of coincidental that they met. They did a traditional outreach and did like I think recruiting as well, trying to find the right person, and then it just happened coincidentally. So putting it out there and like getting FaceTime in the community is you sort of pluck the best people from the community itself, I think. And then for people that are coming in, I think the best way to get involved is to like go to these events, to go to meetups, and that's what I tell people who ask me like, how do I break into blockchain, is just start going to meetups, start going to these events, talking to people, getting in conversations. I think I talked to some people here who were just getting into it as well, and that's absolutely the right way to go.
I think I have lots of problems, so I put the word out there. Since so many people want to come into blockchain, I don't have to do that. That's my challenge.
Oh, okay, so you have the opposite problem.
It's a good problem to have.
How did you put the word out there, by the way? Just like post a job, or?
No, just like friends and traditional network.
Okay. Okay. And is your project like very technically oriented, or what's the? Yeah. Okay, consumer. Yeah. So so I mean, in that situation, like, because you're consumer focused, like I think having someone with consumer experience would actually be beneficial, and somebody who's less technical, because sometimes those people can say, well, explain to me like I'm 5, and then they have a way of just like putting it into words where it just makes sense for everyone. Whereas like some people that are more technical kind of can add jargon and technical terms that make it hard for people to understand. So, hope that helps.
Yeah, I would structure your hiring strategy around your KPIs. So what are your end users? Like, whom are you gonna serve? And this marketer, whom this person will be doing the outreach to. And they would build your marketer hire strategy around that. And if there is not too much blockchain needed for this person for doing storytelling, then you don't need the person with the blockchain background. But you do need a person that believes that blockchain is important in the world of the future. And this here not only for pure greed reasons, and probably not, no one is here for pure greed reason at this point in the market cycle. But yeah, you do want somebody who has prior experience around your KPIs, and around blockchain, you can train this person. Yeah, and me myself, I've been in blockchain since 2017. And I've left Adobe about more than a year ago, and I was just doing a lot of like I was meeting a lot of people and was not doing a lot of recruitment. So was doing almost no recruitment. And just was fascinating that I met people with whom it had such a great click that it was clear for them that it will work out, and it was clear for me that this is a great team to join. Because you are like at this stage in the growth cycle, you are mutually like wearing your venture capitalist hats. They are looking at you and like, are you a good, bad? And you're looking at them in the same way. And so when it works out, it's just fantastic.
Yeah, so from my point of view, it doesn't matter if it's marketing, sales, business development, any kind of client-facing roles. I'm looking at two things. First of all is experience, what this individual did in the past and how successful he was in that. And the second thing is how excited is he, she about it. So you don't need to know exactly how everything works and how the blockchain works and how technical, but you need to see that little spark in the eye when he's asking questions, or when he wants to, he, she, of course, wants to know and explore. That's what I would be looking for. Again, doesn't need to be the most educated guy about blockchain, but it needs to have the passion, and passion, I think, wins it all.
Great. Well, thanks again. Thanks for great questions. We'll be here for a little bit more. So please help us drink our alcohol supply and whatnot we have at the back, and just you can talk to us more if you want back there. Thank you, everyone. Well, thanks, guys.
Hold on. Just step away.